Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cool and Beautiful Rabbit Hole lore and Frey, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. Last weekend, I had the very great pleasure of playing Babynetta, Bayonetta Origins, Cereza and the Lost Demon on Nintendo Switch. I went through the entire demo on stream. It's about like 10% of the game, I think, which makes me concerned about the length. I imagine I'll probably beat this in like a single sitting or something. I can't imagine this game is very long. At a full $60 price, it feels like I'm not sure how much people will buy into that, honestly. Like, the game just doesn't seem like it would appeal to the mass Bayonetta audience. But for me personally, I really enjoyed it. I really like the aesthetics, I like the voice acting, I like the fairy tale charm to it, and I like the whole how much it ties into continuity. Like, as someone who actually cares very deeply about Bayonetta continuity and lore, this was a very great pleasure for me to witness. It was a very interesting look into the early life of this iconic video game character, Bayonetta, and it comes off like this cute little like Harry Potter style like coming of age story where like little Cereza is like learning how to be an Umber Witch and going through the process of like learning how to summon demons and stuff like that. Like you really get this sense that like wow, they really put a lot of effort into like creating what an early life of an Umbran Witch, or the early life of Bayonetta specifically, must have been like. Because like it fits perfectly well in the continuity, it makes a lot of sense, and it's very charming, right? I really enjoy Cereza's character in the original Bayonetta, and it's kind of nice to see her kind of reappear in this game. Like, it gets so confusing with the time travel, but like, yeah, it's like, Cereza, a little bit older, going through this process of like, learning how to be a witch, and it feels very much that the game is based around the summoning mechanic of Bayonetta 3, like to a different in a different kind of way. You have like one demon that you use to solve puzzles and navigate the forest and like occasionally fight monsters. It's incredibly simplified compared to Bayonetta 3, but I have to wonder if that might actually like make the game more appealing to a general audience, or like younger players in particular, girls especially. I think like a lot of girls from a certain background might actually appreciate this kind of like fairy tale-esque like story about a witch and stuff like that. I could see this being like fairly popular with a different demographic than the typical Bayonetta game. But then the thing is, like, this is a Bayonetta game. Like, how much of an audience is there for this mature rated property to get scaled down into like a child friendly like fairy tale story, right? Like, I compare this a little bit to something like Yoshi's Island, right? Yoshi's Island, like has a similar take where like it gives like an origin story to Mario. It gives like this very child music. It has this like very child friendly aesthetic, and yeah, that gorgeous opening soundtrack. Da, 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 da. Like I love that, but like like Yoshi's Island went to great lengths to make Yoshi feel like a completely new property. You have like Yoshi has a ton of great moves. He's ton of fun. He's a ton of fun to control. Like he has like all these interesting like Mario influenced like enemies. Like it's not like a straight copy of what came before, and neither is Cereza. But when I compare it to like what Yoshi's Island did, like Yoshi's Island was like very deceptively like challenging and had a lot going on with like its scoring system and just all the hidden things in the game, and just Yoshi's Island was like, honestly, I consider it to be one of the best games that Nintendo has ever produced. What my personal favorite actually. Cereza doesn't seem to have the same level of like focus on like the game itself. Like my real complaint going into this, like it seems way too story focused. Honestly, like this is the most story-driven Bayonetta game so far, and a part of me like really appreciates like what they do with the story and like how well presented it was, but like the gameplay to the story to cutscene the story to gameplay ratio is just really bad in this. Like I would say it took like a good long while to get into like real gameplay elements, to get into like how the puzzles work, and how like getting Cheshire and like learning how to use him and utilizing him in combat. Like it feels almost as if the game it feels almost if like the game doesn't have the technical depth to be as interesting as something like Yoshi's Island. And I don't want to say the game is bad because it feels very indie devish with its like a general gameplay loop and just what you do in the game and its focus on storytelling. But like, I I don't really like this kind of indie game. Honestly, like when I compare it to something like, Limbo or something like that, like it comes off as very similar to that, honestly. And the thing about Limbo is that, like, I think Limbo was very, very overrated. I have issues with like Inside. I have issues with like what the developers did with those games, right? They're just basic puzzle platformers when you get right down to them. And that's the thing about Cereza is that, like, it's basic. Like when you get right down to it, like there's nothing interesting about the gameplay itself. It just comes off as if like you're going through the motions to get to the story elements. And like the story isn't particularly great either. And honestly, like, I have a hard time believing this is going to be like, the new game of the year contender or anything like that. Like, I don't think the story in Bayonetta, I don't think anyone plays Bayonetta for the story, right? Like, I would have preferred something that really took like the idea of a younger Bayonetta who couldn't like defend herself against the angels like super seriously. Well, she's fighting fairies in this, but like who couldn't defend herself against her enemies like super seriously. Like make it a horror game. Like make it something like that actually fits in with like the initial idea of Bayonetta. Like there are things you could have done with this idea, and I just don't think this was the route they should have gone with. Honestly, like I think maybe there were like things they could have done to make this more appealing to a general audience. Now, like, am I enjoying the game? Oh, absolutely. Like, I'm not like faulting the game for like trying to be something a little bit different and very creative, like, because that's clearly what they were going for. But like for me personally, I think I think there's a lot. There were a lot of things they could have done to make this like I just don't think this idea is going to be financially viable, right? I don't think anyone but like hardcore Spurgs, people who are hardcore fans of the series, are going to get into. I don't see anyone looking at this and thinking this is going to be like a must buy. Honestly, I expect this to be a flop. Honestly, and that's kind of sad to say, but considering how well Bayonetta 3 did, but um, I just don't see who this game was made for, honestly. Like, other than me, like, I myself am like a big hardcore fan of like niche games like this, right? One of my favorite games is Killer 7. I play stuff like this all the time, but oddball stuff like this all the time. But like, I don't think Bayonetta Origins seems to be unwilling to like really commit to making itself like really stick out and be unique, right? Like, it kind of feels kind of stuck in like trying to be something new and trying to be part of an established franchise. I don't know how well that is going to do with a general audience.